Well, the World Health Organization's member states have backed an independent investigation into the UN agency's handling of the global pandemic. This follows sharp criticism by U.S. President Donald Trump. He's accusing the organization of being controlled by China and has threatened to cut its funding.
The war of words between Donald Trump, the World Health Organization, and China has continued into a second day after the US president's threat to permanently leave the WHO on Monday.
Basically, they have to clean up their act. They have to do a better job. They have to be much more fair to other countries, including the United States, or we're not going to be involved with them anymore. We'll do it as separate.
Trump posted the open letter on Twitter stating that if the World Health Organization does not commit to major substantive improvements within the next 30 days, I will make my temporary freeze of United States funding to the WHO permanent and reconsider our membership in the organization. China's foreign ministry criticized the US president's threats. The letter tried to mislead the public in this plausible way to slander China's prevention and control efforts and shirk the US's responsibility for incompetence in its own prevention and control. This is futile. WHO member states agreed to a comprehensive and independent review of the global pandemic response.
As always, WHO remains fully committed to transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. We want accountability more than anyone.
The review will take place, quote, at the earliest appropriate moment.
Let's brief you now on some other coronavirus developments. Global confirmed cases are now approaching 5 million. The death toll is more than 323,000. Brazil has confirmed a record rise in daily deaths from the disease. 1,179 people dying from the virus on Tuesday. South Korean high schools have reopened after being shut down for about 2 months. Hundreds of thousands of older students have returned to the classrooms under strict controls. And New Zealand's Prime Minister has suggested that employers consider a 4-day working week as a way to boost tourism and business activity. Well, the world cut its daily carbon dioxide emissions by about 17% at the peak of the pandemic shutdown last month. A new study shows a huge reduction in global greenhouse gases. Lockdowns kept people at home, of course, in cities around the globe as roads were virtually empty. The skies much clearer than they've been in many years. For 1 week in April, the United States cut its carbon dioxide levels by a full 33%. The study was published in the journal Nature Climate Change. The world's biggest emitter, China, cut its carbon pollution by about a quarter. One of the study's co-authors, Rob Jackson of Stanford University, told us that greenhouse emissions will return at some point to pre-pandemic levels. And he said that the crisis has also led to a change in thinking in a number of areas.
It's a hope. I think one thing the virus is allowing us to do is rethink mobility and transportation. Cities are keeping streets closed to cars that they have allowed pedestrians and bicyclists to use. We're all getting used to telecommuting and may want to continue that at least a few days a week. And nobody misses spending time in rush hour. And finally, I guess the biggest change we've seen is the beautiful blue skies that have come from putting our cars on the street and garages. And if we can have that every day by coupling electric vehicles with clean energy, what's not to like? We don't even have to shelter at home.
Singapore prides itself as a high-tech global business hub, but the city-state has little to boast when it comes to the coronavirus crisis. It currently has one of Asia's highest COVID-19 infection rates. Still, authorities are making plans to exit a partial lockdown on June the 1st, and they're turning to technology to contain possible further outbreaks. But some critics say their controversial approach has technical flaws and raises human rights issues.
Please stand at least 1 meter apart. Thank you.
Spot wants to keep you healthy. The robot enforcer dog is being trialed in a Singapore park. Given the city-state's tech-friendly ways, it's no wonder Singapore was also among the first to introduce a tracing app. Users of the app exchange data via Bluetooth when their phones approach one another. That's supposed to make tracing contacts easier when someone is infected. But so far, only 27% of residents have downloaded the app. Some experts say the project is too ambitious.
You need 60% or 80% of your population to download these apps, even if they do work. And so, unfortunately, the Singaporean app hasn't come close to that, and neither have the apps anywhere else. And so far, they haven't come close to delivering what was hoped for them.
Surveillance is part of daily life in Singapore. Data privacy is of less concern than elsewhere. Still, fear of state snooping is one reason some residents have rejected the app, even if they're reluctant to admit it. And the technology is not perfect.
Do you have the app as well, Trace Together?
No, so far I come here only because I don't know how to use that one. Don't have.
Why not? You don't like it?
Because I lazy to do lah.
It drains the battery of the mobile phone very, very fast. So for me personally, I think it's a failed system. So I simply switch it off.
2 months after rolling out the app, Singapore is trying a simpler technology called Safe Entry. Whether at the supermarket, the barbershop, or the workplace, people can come in only after scanning a QR code or their ID card. No exceptions.
You could even use it in a public park if you wanted to get into the Singapore Botanical Gardens, for instance. You would have to log in and then log out again just to prove who'd been there. It's not as ingenious as the app, in as much as it's not going to tell you who has been close to one another.
Safe Entry, therefore, cannot replace the app. Experts disagree whether the app should become mandatory.
Maybe they'll do it then. But I think it's about not wanting to exclude the citizen, the person living in Singapore from the ability to still exercise some free will.
So despite appeals for unity, there's little consensus in Singapore over the tracing app.
A lot of questions about free will and freedom there. To unpack all of this, we're joined now by Professor Long Ting Yin of Singapore University of Social Sciences. Professor, thanks so much for coming in today. I'd like to focus first on the Safe Entry app. Do you see people accepting a mandatory government app on their phones in order to get into their workplace, to shop for food, to access basic services?
Well, Safe Entry is not actually an app. It's a system that the enterprise, the business have to implement, and this is by law now, that all these businesses, especially small businesses, have to implement at their entry points and exit points. And all the user have to do is to take their mobile phone and scan in the QR code, and that allows them to enter their basic data, which is the name, the telephone number, and a national registration number. And the app will actually register the person's point of entry and the time of entry and point of exit and time of exit. So it's no different from, let's say, someone entering a business and sign the visitor registration.
But this means the government knows where I am all the time, where I'm checking in, where I'm checking out. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, the information is sent to a particular agency in the government who will archive the information. And the information is protected by a national act, a Personal Data Protection Act, which means that information cannot be abused or used unless it is for a specific purpose. And the specific purpose right now is only for COVID-19 contact tracing.
Okay, and it will end after that. The app will no longer be in use.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
About 30% of people have downloaded the tracing app that follows their movements. Is that going to be used in the future? Is that part of Singaporean life now, the tracing app?
Well, the tracing app and the Safe Entry app and other measures and technology which will soon be rolled up as well. They are part of an overall package called Safe Management. And businesses are obliged in some situation, mandatory to apply those technologies, and in some situation, some of the technologies is actually optional. For example, Trace Together is optional, but the two technologies, Safe Entry and Trace Together, actually have two separate scenario where they apply. Safe entry is only useful where there is a, let's say, very defined area, entering a barber shop and exit a barber shop, a small little bubble area. But if you enter a big shopping complex, and in the complex there are tens of or thousands of people, then the intermingling of people in that area will be making contact tracing almost problematic to start off with. So you need another application like Trace Together. So in most organizations, large organizations, for example, a university or where there are huge campuses, multiple entry points and so on, well, the organization themselves, as part of their business continuity management, would normally require the Trace Together Act to be implemented. Now, I think the concern right now is...
Continue, if you finish your thought.
The adoption rate is low. Yeah, sure, okay. The adoption rate is low, and I understand that why the adoption rate is low. Partially is because right now, the whole of Singapore
we have to leave it.
Lockdown.
There's a lot to talk about there. We'd love to continue the conversation, Professor. For now, though, thanks so very much, Professor Long Tin Ying from Singapore.
You're welcome.